presented by Volo. If you're into some of them adult recreation activities, volleyball, basketball, dodgeball, softball, whatever it may be, throw in a little bit of razzle dazzle with some flag football or whatever it may be out there. Volo is the spot to check out. If you are a fan of watching sports or having a great sports bar type atmosphere for some good food, TVs all the way around to watch some of the amazing things going on in the Denver sports world right now, make sure that you come and check out the number 38. It's down here off of 38th and Chestnut in Rhino. Great spot to be. Got my man Danny Bailey behind the boards holding it down for me, as always, each and every week. The true soldier of this show and program. So got to give him a thank you as always. Guys, as mentioned, give me a follow online at Comments from the Peanut Gallery on Instagram or on Threads. Make sure that you follow Mile High Sports across all platforms and smash that like, share, and subscribe as well. In the big sports world right now, it's a great time to be a fan in the Denver world. You have the Broncos that are cruising along. They ran the ball down the Raiders' throats this last weekend out there in Vegas, brought the brooms out, had the clean sweep for the season. Got to give a shout out to my man Cody Rourke, as always, each and every week. The segments and the stuff that he's doing covering the Broncos, it's fun to watch. The What the Football is probably one of the most entertaining things that I see, like outside of my space and MMA world every single week. He put up a video the other day of watching his wife try to break down film. I laughed the entire time because he's just sitting there like, nope, that's not a tight end. Nope, that's a different number. That's 77, not 97. Just hilarious banter. It's great content. Make sure that you give them a follow and check that out right there. You have the Avs that are crushing it. They're on an incredible pace right now starting the season. The Nuggets, you don't need to hear anything other than the Joker. Nikola Jokic is a special talent. He's a once-in-a-generation. I mean, he's the best player in franchise history. So if you can, make sure that you check out those winter sports and come down to the number 38. Again, this is where we're a house for Mile High Sports. There is merchandise available on demand. There's the Joker t-shirt. There is the Mile High Barrel Man. There's a couple other Mile High novelty designs that you can pick up on demand, again, at any time down here at the number 38. Make sure that you check them out right there and follow all across the board. For the Colorado Rundown, we have a few shows that are going to be closing out the year here in 2025. Just want to give a mention, there is a couple of events going for Sparta this weekend. Shout out to all the fighters that are competing on those cards. May the best be with you there. But we have a big show for 5280 Muay Thai that is closing out the year. A couple of very high-stakes fight with some straps on the line in the mix. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later on in the program. Our show, 5280 Muay Thai, Colorado's all-exclusive Muay Thai promotion, is going to be going down on the 13th. That is Saturday. It's a matinee show. We're cracking the doors open at 12. First fight's around 1. Come and check out some action. The Art of 8 Limbs is always entertaining. You do not want to miss that. Then next week, we have Colorado Combat Club closing out the year for 2025. That is going down also on the 20th. Same start time, cracking the doors at 12. First fight's around 1. It is a loaded card, and we're going to talk more about those matchups next week. So keep it locked there. There is still the opportunity to buy paper tickets in hand from the fighters out there. If you have the chance, that's the best way to go about it. You're going to save yourself a couple of bucks in the process. Either way, if you're purchasing online or from the fighter, that definitely helps them in the process. When you purchase online, it is important that you use their code in the checkout process so that they get the commission for those tickets that are being sold. That's something that, especially for these amateur competitors, that's the only way that they're getting paid in the process. So it is also something that helps elevate their platform for future opportunities. If you can, please buy from them directly, or if you're using the online point of sale system, use their promo code so that they are able to get credit for your ticket sale in the process. That all being said, let's transition here into the weekend recap. This last weekend, UFC 323, it was a crazy night of fights. There was some shakeups as far as the title scene goes in both the 135 and the 125-pound division. Let's dive into some of these matchups here. Now, we said last week that if there was another fighter out there at 135 pounds that has the chance to usurp Merab Dvalishvili and the machine-like run that he's been on, it would be Petr Yan. Petr Yan is one of the skill-for-skill best guys on the entire roster. He was already a champion at 135 pounds, unceremoniously lost that belt with the illegal knee that was thrown against Merab's best friend and training partner, Aljamain Sterling, a couple of years back. Piotr has stayed the course and has rallied through a couple of peaks and valleys in the process, got himself back into the title scene, and he looked magnificent in this fight against Merab. Maybe you could say a little bit that Merab got a little too overzealous or too confident. Aljamain said that he thought Merab won the first 3 rounds. I don't know what he saw for him to give that justification for winning the first 3 rounds. This also, to me, rang a little bit of familiarity that we've seen from past fighters or certain situations where you have someone who is an extremely talented grappler, but then starts to refine some of their striking and gets better on the feet, and they kind of lose sight of what got him to the dance. We went almost the entire first round without seeing a takedown attempt from Merab. I think that it was a tactical mistake that Merab did not attack the wrestling very early on in the fight. And it's also easy to say from the outside, we don't know what he was feeling from Piotr in the process. Also, Jan defended so many takedowns in their first matchup a couple of years ago, which this does set up a potential trilogy fight, but we'll get to a little bit more of that. I just think that not threatening the ground game, not threatening the grappling, and trying to exchange with Jan, who is by far and large the superior striker. That dude is a purist, and he puts the art and martial artist when it comes to MMA striking. He also showed why he is of that championship caliber and has championship blood in him, and being able to rally back after all these years and recapture that gold. It was borderline mastery in some of those sequences that we saw from Jan. He bludgeoned the face of Merab in some of the sequences, and especially once we got to the championship rounds, where then the boxing opened up the body kicks or some of the body shots in the process. There's the clip that's gone viral from the fight where Merab was mic'd up, or they caught the hot mic of Merab in the cage once that liver kick landed, and you hear Merab yelp in the process. It's a kudos and a credit to his conditioning that he was able to battle through that adversity. But I think there's also potentially something to be said about Merab's activity that he's had over the last year. Making weight and going through that arduous process 4 times within a calendar year, that's something that's really hard on the body. That is something that could very well have a physical impact on performance and output. For some guys, it's not as big of a deal, but for others, depending on how hard that cut is and what the state of your body is while going through the process, that could very definitely be a difference maker in your overall level of performance. It's not making an excuse for him by any means. It's just pointing out actual science and exercise science, whatever you want to call it, behind it. I've seen a couple of weight cut experts that are out there that work with a lot of fighters that spoke to this could have been an explanatory factor for some things for Merab. But I think more than the potential weight cut situation throughout the year, I think that there were tactical mistakes that were made by Merab in this fight. As mentioned, he did not threaten the wrestling the way that he normally does. When you are a landslide leader for the most takedowns in UFC history, coming into the fight 117, I believe the next guy behind him was GSP with under 100. That is a tactical mistake, in my opinion, not to at least, even if you don't get the takedown, you threaten it early to make Jan have to respect the threat. But if you're just going to stand and bang or stand and trade at range with somebody like Piotr Jan, he's going to take that fight all day long. Again, this sets up a potential trilogy fight. I don't know if that's something that they run back right away with Merab, but it does make for that opportunity in the future. We're entering the Paramount era. Paramount is big on their storylines, as we mentioned last week, and as the promo that they released to start off this era alluded to. Could be very well something that they build on, especially when you have the angle from the first fight where there was so much bad blood based off of the Georgia-Russian conflict between the two of them. It makes for an interesting story angle. In the co-main event, this one was in some ways, depending on which way you look at it or from which camp you're coming from, it was a heartbreaker. But I say that in the sense of, yes, the title changed hands, and not a heartbreaker in the sense that Joshua Van is now the champion. It is the way in which the fight ended. With as decorated of a run that Alexandre Pantoja has had as a champion at 125 pounds, for that title reign to come to a close within 30 seconds of the first round because of an injury, that sucks. For even the fans of Joshua Van and Van himself, that's not the way that you necessarily want to win a fight. But also, I can totally understand Van's perspective of, well, I just became the second youngest champion in UFC history, and I put in less than 30 seconds of work, didn't take any damage in the process. I can understand the elation from there, but I do also understand the criticism that a lot of people had for Van's celebration. Van went along and celebrated like he completely put him out, or, knocked him out, submitted him, whatever it may be. That was what his celebration was like. And a lot of people drew ire to that. They said, hey, like, this fight ended because of a fluke injury in the process. Not entirely a fluke. You're always taught to not post with a straight arm the way that Pantoja did for the potential of a devastating injury like that. And his arm blew up. I mean, you could see his arm just go completely kaput on camera. It was hard to watch. There was a lot of people who turned away. DC, even from the broadcast table, past the point that it happened, he had to keep on turning away. Couldn't see the injury rehappen over and over. Totally understandable. It's one of those injuries that, God, it's just, you hate to see it when you've had somebody like Pantoja, who has been the consummate professional, who has taken on all challengers and has done so in a very impressive fashion throughout his run. We don't know yet how long this is going to set him back. This is the type of injury that could potentially be career altering, depending on what the level of structural damage along with ligament and whatnot. He's going to have to go see orthopedic specialists, get a lot more tests and all that done. And then once he's back, it's going to take time to rebuild from the injury itself, and then to build confidence back into that arm and into your arsenal of attacks. Sets up a couple of potential big fights down the way, which leads us into the feature fight of the night, which was Tatsuro Taira taking on Brandon Moreno. Brandon Moreno, former flyweight champion himself. Tatsuro Taira, he does a lot of his training out here in Denver, does work a lot of stuff with high altitude, and Coach Mike Gonzalez over there. Actually was on After the Final Bell with Coach Mike yesterday. Tatsuro is still becoming an apex predator of this division. He's already top of the food chain and one of the top contenders of the weight class. But with him still being so young and evolving with every performance and getting better with each outing, we're nowhere near close to seeing the prime of Tatsuro Taira. Nowhere even close. This leads to a very interesting situation, again, with the title shakeup at the top. You have Tatsuro, who got the big win over Moreno, TKO'd him in the second round. You can make the argument that Mark Smith's stoppage was a little bit premature, kind of like a teenager with his first nudie mag. But it's also potentially, or it was, almost an inevitable spot. He had him flattened out from the back. Moreno started to get up and then got collapsed again. If this was, say, a local level or a earlier pro or an amateur fight, totally fine with the stoppage with where it was. With the implications that were on the line, and with Brandon Moreno being your warrior, your former champion, from a purist standpoint, you got to kind of give that guy a little bit more respect and let him go out on his shield in the process. That's just one man's perspective on it. Now, again, that was potentially just the inevitable outcome of what it was going to be, either him getting choked out or him getting finished with a TKO from the ground and pound. But Mark Smith's stoppage left a little bit of space for the questions to be asked, if that makes sense. One way or the other, though, they have options now at 125 pounds. If you have, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this fight coming up, but if you have Brandon Raw Dog Royval go out there and have an impressive finish right away against Manel Kape, well, that sets up a rematch with Joshua Van, which their International Fight Week bout was a Fight of the Year contender. You have Tatsuro Taira, who has just beat a former champion in Brandon Moreno, who is then also knocking on the door of that title shot. Then the other lurking guy out there for a potential shot at gold is Kyoji Horiguchi. In the post-fight press conference, Dana White said that they are looking at some venues in Japan already to figure out what they can do going to a show over there. That almost leads you to believe that Tatsuro is probably the favorite for the next call. But there's also Horiguchi that's out there that is a massive star in the Asian market, who was a champion in Ryzen, which is a Japanese-based promotion. So in a nutshell, from our standpoint here in the Mile High City, or at least mine being a Brandon Raw Dog Royval purist or a stan, if you will, we need him to go out there and take care of business so he seals the deal on that title shot. Because if y'all remember, over the course of about the last year and a half, Brandon was the clear-cut #1 contender, but the previous fights with Pantoja prevented him from getting a third fight with Pantoja. He took the fight with Joshua Van on short notice and was winning that fight all the way until the last 30 seconds, where that swayed the decision based off of the final sequence of that fight. But again, when we're talking about storylines, well, there are multiple storylines now out there. You have a battle of two extremely young superstars in the making of Joshua Van and Tatsuro Taira. You could potentially have the return of Kyoji Horiguchi, which would then pretty much do the grand slam of titles, was a Bellator champ, was a Ryzen champ, would then now become a UFC champ. And then you have the storyline of, if you have the rematch with Tatsuro and Brandon, that was a big fight where Royval won, and it was an earlier stage of Tatsuro's career. And if Horiguchi were to get the title shot, so one way or the other, there's options now at 125. And that's all to be said, because I don't think that this is going to be a quick return for Pantoja. I would foresee this being a 6-8 month plus potential situation as far as the injury timeline goes, and at what capacity will he be back? That's all yet to be seen. Following that, we had a bantamweight matchup between Peyton Talbot and Triple C Henry Cejudo. This was Henry Cejudo's retirement fight, and did he get beat up a little bit? Yes, absolutely. But did he fight like a dog all the way until the final bell? 100%. This is just something that we see. We see it time and time again, where there's the changing of the guard, where you have the old dog who basically puts over the new rising star. And Peyton Talbot, there's a lot of criticisms that people can have out there, or, after the Borsellos fight, that, oh, he was a fraud, he got fraud checked, blah, blah, blah. No, he just fought a really talented guy in Johnny Borsellos, who is extremely well-rounded, who has the veteran tricks to be able to get the job done against a young guy who had never faced that sort of adversity before. And we said it after that fight that would very likely be a slingshot effect for somebody like Peyton Talbot, who will grow immensely from that. There's a lot of crazy memes out there, or the stuff that people said. One of the best memes that I saw, and it's hilarious, but we all know the famous "send him 2-3 years Dagestan, forget." There was a lot of people saying, well, and we know the connection of Peyton Talbot and Frank Ocean. Send him 2-3 years with Frank Ocean and forget, because he out wrestled an Olympic gold medalist in the process. Took him down, kind of ragdolled him at times. But it was just very evident that Henry, he's done. It was time for him to walk away. It was time for him to hang the gloves up and move on to the next venture in life. Father Time is undefeated, ladies and gentlemen. And especially when you're somebody like Henry Cejudo, who was at such a high level of combat sports competition at such an early age, sometimes that clock expires a little bit sooner than what it does for some guys. And that's just the nature of the beast because you've had so many miles on the body. Henry, it's well known of a lot of the surgeries that he's had to have throughout the years, whether it's wrist, thumb, shoulders, knees. A lot of stuff has broken down physically. The spirit was still there mentally, but the mechanism, the physical vessel, is nowhere near what it once was. I love to see that he got the bonus on the way out the door. He got paid reportedly both his show win and a performance bonus on the process. It's great to see that they took care of him on the way out the door. That's a guy who, through the years, did a tremendous amount for the company. I mean, a self-promoter through and through. You could call him cringe, you could say whatever, but he saved the flyweight division. If Henry Cejudo did not do what he did back then at that time, especially through that fight with Mighty Mouse to then making that title defense, ushering in ESPN era against TJ Dillashaw, who knows where the flyweight division is at? He literally saved an entire weight class by himself throughout that process. You got to give him some love and respect. Now, what's next? Well, he still has the Pound for Pound podcast that he does with Kamaru Usman, but hopefully he stays involved with combat sports in some sort of role and capacity because he has a wealth of knowledge to be able to pass on to this next generation. His brother Angel is noted for his coaching ability down there at Fight Ready in Phoenix. I wonder if Henry follows suit or follows that path, goes around and does the seminar tour and is in the mix for those sorts of things. The next match, and this one ended in a majority draw, and in a way, I get it. This was the matchup between former UFC light heavyweight champion Jan Blachowicz taking on rising contender Bogdan Guskov. I get that Jan was in deep waters in the second round, but the amount of damage that he did in the first and the third, especially with the left hand and with the calf kicks, it's hard for me to justify Blachowicz not winning that fight. That's now 2 draws in high-profile positions or on pay-per-view main cards that Jan Blachowicz has unfortunately been a part of. First one being the light heavyweight title fight against Magomed Ankalaev. You got to feel bad for Jan a little bit because Father Time is ticking against him. He's definitely only got a couple of fights left on the clock. And one thing that was noticeable, though, too, again, we talked about a little bit with Cejudo, some of the surgeries that Giannis had. Well, we can see that those are now impacting his performance. He really didn't have a whole lot of sting on the right arm. He's had surgery on that right shoulder. The left hand still stiff with Polish power. Leg kicks still insane. I mean, Bogdan's legs were left purple and blue all the way up and down that shin line. Would a stiffer right hand in a couple of those sequences been a difference maker to close the deal? Potentially. It's just for me, I don't necessarily agree with the decision. I thought that it should have been a 29-28 for Jan Blachowicz, but that's why I'm not a judge. Transitioning from that, you had a big win in the first round by Manuel Torres over Grant Dawson. Manuel Torres is a rising force in the 155-pound division. He earned himself a bonus also in the process. That moves his record to 17-3. If you want to see fireworks and you want to see excitement, check out the next Manuel Torres fight. A lot of you don't necessarily know who he is yet. You will, because he just beat a ranked contender in a very highlight reel fashion. You want to speak about fireworks and highlights. The next fight was 3 yards in a cloud of dust for half a round. It was 2 minutes and 30 seconds by the time that the fight ended. We said it last week. Terrence McKinney is shot like a cannon every single time, shot like he's out of a cannon every single time that he fights. He goes for broke right away, and this time it worked against him. Sometimes it works in his favor. He had Chris Duncan hurt right away in the first round, but in chasing the finish and trying to put him out, well, that Scotsman, that Scottish warrior, that Braveheart SOB, Chris Duncan is as resilient as it gets, and he was able to punch his way out of damage. I mean, he was all but finished. I was getting messages from people through the first, 90 seconds of the fight. How the hell is he still up? How is he still fighting? And then all it took was a short elbow up against the fence, and that completely changed the tides of the fight. Terrence McKinney was very wobbled and hurt from it. I mean, he wasn't even really defending for about 30 to 45 seconds of weathering damage from Duncan before ultimately Duncan was able to sink that anaconda choke and earn the submission victory. Back and forth war. That was 2 minutes and 30 seconds of nonstop action if you did not get to see it. The next fight, Maycee Barber bounced back in a very impressive fashion. She had a big win against Karine Silva. Silva even fouled her a couple of times in the process, a couple of kicks to a downed opponent, one of them right from the end of the second round with her exiting the half guard. That was point blank. That was a very illegal kick. Maycee did get a little wobbled from the process, but it was great to see that with all the adversity that she's had to go through health-wise over the last couple of years, that she was able to make the weight and then go in there and have a performance that helped her rediscover herself and who she is. She was a little emotional in the post-fight interview with Joe in the octagon, and very understandably so, to say like, hey, I'm just happy to be back here. I'm happy to be back making the walk, doing what I love, and I'm happy to get my hand raised speaking to you right now. Got to commend that, especially given all the known adversity that's gone on. Next matchup, you had an exciting fight between Farazam and Nazem Sadykhov. It was a KO TKO with elbows and follow-up punches in the process. You know, that's a couple of guys that they're strikers. So you could expect action no matter what in that matchup. Moving along just to run through this because we got a couple other things to hit on the way through the show. Jalen Turner taking on Edson Jr. Barbosa. Jalen Turner came back and announced his presence with authority. That was a beautiful TKO that he scored. But leading up to it, the elbow that opened up Barbosa, he was leaking crazily through the process. And I never want to tell somebody that, oh, their time is over or it's up if they still have that fight in them or they're still being competitive. But we do have to start having the conversation of Barbosa at around 4 years old now that start to maybe think about what is next. Physically, he still looks to be a machine of strength and conditioning and in shape. But again, we talked a little bit about it last week. The face tells the tale of the damage and the miles that's been put on his body. He's got droop eye in one eye, which is an indication that he had either an orbital fracture or cheekbone injury at some point, along with some soft tissue damage and things that are not sitting correctly anymore on that side of his face. What are the long-term ramifications? And especially with him being the striking sort of fighter, well, sometimes when he loses, it's by taking big damage and going in a striker's delight and trading. What is the long-term effects of that damage? And, where is he at going forward? Just another one to hit on the way out here. You had Mansour Abdul Malik, who took on Antonio Tricoli. Not too often do we see a standing guillotine happen in the UFC. Pretty interesting submission to see there in the process. This fight ends in that first round. About a minute left in the round to go. That moves Mansour's record to 9-0-1. That's an exciting prospect. That's a guy that you have to keep your eyes on in the middleweight division. Moving along from that, we're going to talk about this weekend's weekend preview. Guys, we are officially at the end of an era. What do you guys feel about this transition that's going from ESPN to Paramount Plus? Let us know. Hit me up on Instagram or on Threads at Comments from the Peanut Gallery. Starting off, we're going to talk about the main event. These are going to be the last two fighters to make the walk during this ESPN era. We have Brandon Raw Dog Royval, who is the A side of this main event, taking on Manel Kape. I'll put it blankly. I've never been a big Manel Kape guy. Is he a talented fighter with dangerous, explosive action? Sure. But a couple of years ago, or about a year and a half, whenever we were still at the old studio, we had Uncle Creepy Ian McCall in studio along with us. He was there with Mark the Shark Irwin. Ian McCall was one of the early staple stalwarts of the 125-pound division. When he was fighting overseas, he had a bout against Manel Kape, and Kape slapped him in a face-off. And from that point on, because especially already when you're talking about a legend in Ian McCall the way that he was, I just never really got into Kape and some of his antics, the way that he had the back and forth and the stuff go on with Makayev. Just never been a big fan of his. And on the flip side, I couldn't be more of a bigger stand for Brandon Royval. I mean, I'm wearing a Brandon Royval fighter tee along with the QMP Co. Brandon Royval signature hat. He is a Denver kid through and through. He is somebody who puts on for our community. He is someone who means a great deal to me on a personal level, not just to somebody in our fight community professionally. If you're a Denver MMA fan, you should want Brandon Royval to win this fight. This is a matchup that has been scheduled a couple of times. There was an injury to each guy that pushed this back. It was originally scheduled for, I believe, last March, then International Fight Week, and then now finally happening here in December. I think that it's a great matchup for Brandon in the sense that Kape is going to bring some fight to him that he can capitalize. Is it dangerous? 100%, because Kape is explosive and he does have the ability to finish guys from the feet. But I also believe that Brandon is going to put a pace on him that is going to be unsustainable. I don't foresee this going any other way than a Brandon Royval finish or a Brandon Royval victory first and foremost, but I would favor or fancy that a finish is going to happen sometime within that 25 minutes. In the co-main event, you get a banger matchup on paper between Giga Chikadze taking on Kevin Vallejos. Giga, a longtime standout of Glory Kickboxing, has then had a lot of exciting fights in his UFC run. He's taken on Kevin Vallejos of Argentina, who is 16-1. That's an exciting fight. You're going to have two guys who love to go out there and strike, and you're going to see some high-paced action. You're going to see some explosive striking, and if Giga is back to form, he's got some of the most intense and insane kicks that you'll see on the entire roster. Next matchup, you have a middleweight showdown between Cesar Almeida, another former Glory Kickboxing standout, taking on Cezary Olejniczak. Olejniczak, if that name sounds familiar, well, it is because he is the brother of Michael Olejniczak, longtime veteran of the UFC. Couple of guys who are big-time strikers. If you're picking up a theme here, you got it. Through those first few fights, those are going to be some striking matchups for sure. You might see a change of pace, though, when it comes time to the next fight. The next fight following that, you have Kennedy Nzechukwu taking on Marcus Buchecha. Buchecha, one of the greatest heavyweight grapplers to ever exist in the jiu-jitsu world. He's sitting at 5-2 as far as his MMA record goes. He's got another big, tough test with Kennedy, who Kennedy, I don't believe, he's no title contender, no world beater by any means in that sense, but is that a big, mean human that is hard to be able to get a wrangle of, especially once you're in the midst of, past the first couple of minutes when you're dry in a fight? Oh, it's going to be tough to wrangle him for submissions, but that's why they go out there and they fight the fight. Next matchup is a last-second replacement. You have Lance Gibson, who just got signed to take on Bobby King Green. On paper, this is a favorable matchup for Bobby. Bobby has an insane level of an experience advantage. Bobby's coming into the contest 32-17-1. You have Lance Gibson Jr., 9-1. But when we start talking about, and we've spoken on it with a couple of these aging fighters already so far, what does Bobby have left in the tank? What does Bobby's chin have left, I guess I should say? Bobby's had a couple of bad knockouts over the course of the last couple of years. What does he still have left? The spirit, the fighter warrior spirit that Bobby King Green has that lives within him, that's never going to die. That's not going to fade. But as we saw from other guys from the past of Vanderlei Silva, who is still a spark plug, or to the end with Chuck Liddell's or those sorts of guys of the world, once that chin has been touched one too many times, the lights are going to go out that much quicker. Do we see that on Saturday night? Something to keep your eye on. I like this next matchup on the card. You have a fight between the Savage Jillian Robertson, who is taking on Amanda Lemish. A couple of contrasting styles. Lemish likes to do a lot more of the striking variety, whereas Jillian Robertson has improved and rounded out her striking. But at 115 pounds, she is one of the most savage submission artists that we have on the roster. Her death cuddles, she gets to that armbar position, or she can get your back. It's a bad time. I see her using her striking blend to be able to get that action down to the canvas. And if it gets to the canvas, I think it's a wrap. I think that Robertson continues to move her way up the ranks with another submission victory added to her credit. Next matchup is a featherweight bout. You have a short notice signing due to injury. You have Isaac Thompson, who is just freshly signed, going to be taking on Joe Anderson Brito. Both of these guys have fought in Colorado for the LFA. Joe Anderson Brito fought here on a Vail card back in 2019. Isaac Thompson fought at one of the cards at Magnus Arena for the DU shows. I believe it was the most recent one that happened in 2024. Could be mistaken on the date of that one that happened, but I believe it was that 2024 card. It was against AJ Robb in the process. Thompson coming out of that Team Alpha Male camp. He has a lot of strong wrestling to his arsenal. He will mix it up on the feet. But Joe Anderson Brito is one of the most explosive guys that they have at 145. He can finish fights by submission, but he is also just a reckless ball of energy that comes flying at you right away. And if you aren't on your P's and Q's, he will find a finishing blow because he's throwing punches and bunches. He's striking from sometimes some crazy unorthodox angles because he throws everything but the kitchen sink at you. But his recklessness also at times is to his detriment. He'll put himself out of position to where he can be countered and capitalized on because he does throw so hard with absolutely everything. The next fight on the card, got to give a shout out to my dog, the Haitian sensation, Neil Magny. Just on a human level, man, I love Neil Magny. Neil Magny is a great guy. Denver is his home. He trains at a high altitude, pound for pound, does a lot of work with all these guys out here and the younger crop of helping them rise up through the ranks. He has been that litmus test of 170 pounds for quite some time. Everybody who's a killer that's gone through welterweight, Neil Magny has fought at some point. You have the welcoming of Yaroslav Amosov, who was a former Bellator champion. He's the infamous fighter who, when the Russian-Ukraine war started happening again, he vacated his title to go fight for the Ukraine. He's coming into this fight at 28-1. Again, another menace who Neil Magny says, yeah, run it. Let's go. Not to take away anything from Yaroslav Amosov, but if you're a Denver MMA fan, you want Neil Magny to win this fight. A couple of more bouts on this UFC card to talk about before we head to our next segment in the process. You have a heavyweight bout between Sean Sharaf and Steven Asplund. A couple of guys who don't have a whole ton of cage time and experience yet. You have Sean with a record of 4-1. You have Steven with a 6-1 record. However, Asplund has been a little entertaining in the process. You know, still some things that absolutely have to be worked on and rounded out, but he is going to bring a fight. He is going to try to put on a show for the fans, and that at least makes it a little bit promising. But then again, always, as we say, especially with some of these, for lack of a better reference, lower tier heavyweights, if it's not a knockout early, there's a potential for 15 minutes of titty bumping. Following fight from that, we've got a couple of LFA standouts as well. Also have some time here in Colorado. You have Luana Santos taking on Melissa Scare Croden. Melissa Croden fought here last year on the LFA card. She is now, she came into the UFC, had a big TKO victory to close out the third round of that fight. She's taking on Luana Santos. Luana Santos, judo standout, who then transitioned her way into MMA. She actually fought here on the last UFC card that was in Denver. So again, a couple of fighters who have fought here. If you paid attention to the local shows or events that have happened on the Colorado scene, they've both been here at one point in time. And Also, to that, I don't know. I can't really throw a pick out there. I'm friends with both of them, both tremendous people out there and great people in the fight game. I just hope that it's a very entertaining fight. I think that Luana is definitely giving up some size in this matchup. I think that Luana is better suited at 25, but we'll see how she adjusts and continues to go forward at 135 pounds. You then have a matchup in the heavyweight division of a couple of guys with combined 11 fights worth of experience. You have Alan Fry taking on Guilherme Pat, the American against the Brazilian in this matchup. To be honest, don't know a whole lot about these two simply because there isn't a whole lot to go off of. They're both still early on in their career that they need to still figure out some more things about themselves with only 6 and 5 fights respectively. In the following matchup, you have Teresa Bleda, who has taken on Jamie Lynn Horth. Jamie Lynn Horth, Canadian fighter who was a standout of the LFA ranks. That's opening up the card. Styles clash in this matchup. Maybe you would like to think that some of the grappling and the experience working positional control for Jamie helps out. But again, that's why they fight the fight. We're going to transition now and talk about this weekend's 5280 Muay Thai Fight Series 38 card going down at the Stampede. In the main event, we have a ISKA 165-pound title bout. It is going down between Javon Dale, who is taking on George Shi. George being the challenger coming out of Muay Thai Colorado. He has a record of 8-1. Javon Dale has a record of 7-0. Javon Dale is a highlight reel machine. He's fought for us multiple occasions for 5280, as well as some Muay Thai scraps in the Colorado Combat Club cage. He is violence personified. Kicks that will take people completely off of their feet. Elbows that send domes crashing to the canvas without any sort of defense in the process. He's a thoroughbred. That kid is a scrapper through and through. But George, on the flip side, is an extremely talented and tremendous competitor in his own respect. He is coming out of one of the best pure Muay Thai camps that Colorado has to offer over there with Oscar Martinez and Muay Thai Colorado. Every single time that they bring somebody out there to fight, they're well-rounded and they are skilled at combat. This is a title fight that is worth the price of admission alone to check these two out, throwing the Art of 8 Limbs this weekend. Following that, you have a matchup between Robert Belfon out of Rad Muay Thai taking on Mario Zendeja out of Havoc MMA. Both guys have at least 5 fights worth of experience in the process, other smokers and disciplines that they've competed in as well. It's going to be an exciting fight for that co-main event bout. Next matchup, man, you've got a couple of younger dudes who they are spark plugs of energy, very dynamic with their movement, explosive, mix it up with their arsenal of attacks. You have Jaden Etienne out of Tankhead Muay Thai. He's taken on Colin Fitzgerald out of Colorado Combative Sports and Academy. This is a fight with these two young gentlemen that they're the next wave. They're the future. They're the guys who, provided everything stays the course, in the next couple of fights, they're potentially looking at knocking on the door of an ISKA title. That's the sort of promise and the potential that these two young competitors have. Next fight, man, you have two camps that have just so much experience between the two of their crews, their leaders in the process. You have the Bang Muay Thai product of Caleb Leva, who has taken on Rory Handlos of 3D Martial Arts. Now, Rory picked up a big win in his last fight with us. He's had 2 very close fights otherwise. So don't let the record, whatever is on paper, fool you. This kid can absolutely fight, and the essence of his crew that you see within his fighting, if you ever watched a Brandon Thatch fight, it is ruckus. It is pure violence. It is mixing up the levels and the attacks. It is throwing combinations with volume and veracity. I love seeing some of these former coaches who have taken on these students and those students have bought into the process, and you see so much of that style along with their own little bit of flair translate through their performances. Rory is a kid, again, who I think has a lot of talent and a lot of ability. He's going to be given a tough test to the undefeated Caleb Leva, who Caleb Leva comes out of Bang Muay Thai, who Dwayne Bang Ludwig, world-renowned. One of the most decorated and respected striking coaches out there that the world has to offer. Again, this is one of those fights that you do not want to go take a break for. This is not the one for you to go get some refreshments or grab another drink at the bar. This is a fight that you need to be locked in for, because they are going to bring violence the entire time. Following that, we got a matchup between Dylan Long of PKT Muay Thai taking on Christian Turbeville out of Pariah MMA. Elijah Caceres and that crew up there in Northern Colorado, man, I got a lot of respect for them. Those guys show up there. They got, call it, for lack of a better reference, a blue-collar grit to them coming from that school up there in the Greeley area. Elijah has done a lot of great work with his guys, but also want to give a shout-out to Drew Lawrence down there at Pariah MMA, and they're going to scrap. They've got some Southern Colorado wild hair up you-know-where, and they're going to come in and they're going to bring some fight also in the process. Both guys we've seen before, and they're going to go out there, and somebody's always got to go. Following that, you have Matt Ramos of Fusebox Sambo taking on Mario Bonilla of Havoc MMA. A couple of guys who are early on in their journey, but they both have fight experience. Looking forward to seeing the action that they bring, because, again, these young guys, sometimes it's a little more checkers than chess, and you see that crazy energy come out from them. There's going to be a scrap. Following that, you got a matchup of another Bang Muay Thai product in Brady Zimmerman taking on Jesus Pacheco out of Havoc MMA. It's going to be Jesus's debut in the process, but Coach Rich Pacheco over there at Hammock, he's doing some great things. They've got a couple of fighters that are getting down this weekend on the Fury card. You've got Carlos Calderon as well as Monique Dodson, who are going to be in action there. So they've got a lot of people who are peaking and being ready to go right at this time. There's something to be said about that a lot of times as well. And then we have a matchup between Sam Dubell taking on Ben Gerson. This is Sam's debut. He's also coming out of Elijah Caceres' camp up there at PKT Muay Thai. He's taking on Ben Gerson, who is at a Black Sheep Universe MMA down there in Colorado Springs under the tutelage of Alejandro the Hurricane Rodriguez. Ben just competed this last weekend on the CJJC card. It's back-to-back weeks of going through a weight cut, so I'm not sure potentially or how much weight he's cutting or how that may impact his performance, but that kick and scrap, man. I've got a lot of respect for Ben Gerson. He's had some tough opponents along the way and has thrown himself into the fire time and time again across multiple disciplines, as mentioned, grappling. He's fought MMA over the last year. He's fought with us in the Muay Thai ring a couple of times now. One way or the other, he shows up to fight, and I respect the hell out of him for that. Guys, you can get your tickets right now at www.bit.ly/5280MT38TIX. That show, again, is going to be going down at the Stampede this weekend. We are cracking the doors at 12, and we are going to be starting the fights at a scheduled run at about 1 o'clock. Please come out, show your support. Check out the Art of 8 Limbs. You'll be out of there in time to be able to watch the UFC Fight Night card and check out Brandon Royval. Go get the job done in that main event. Moving along from that. Oh, one last thing to mention for that card. This is an all ages card. And some of you, hey, you might just want to be a part of this as well. But we are going to have a Grinch there that's going around and taking some pictures with everybody in the process. So it's going to help add a little bit of fun with the holiday cheer in the process. Come and check that out. It's going to be a festive atmosphere. So again, that's going to be 5280 Muay Thai Fight Series 38 going down at the Stampede, 2430 South Havana Street in Aurora, Colorado, cracking the doors at 12 and starting the fights off at 1 o'clock. Moving along to one final thing here before we get ourselves out the door with 3 rounds. I just want to bring you the message of the week. And this is inspired by a performance that we saw at CJJC over the weekend and the post-match interview with Jason Cassius Mullen. For a lot of us out there, martial arts is a vessel that we use help find ourselves, or maybe rediscover a part of ourselves that maybe went dormant or was missing or got off the path a little bit. There's times where, especially if we're results oriented versus process driven, we get caught up in the wins and the losses. We get caught up in the noise, caught up in the adversity of things. But when we strip ourselves away from that part of the game and get back to being process driven, being back to the roots of who we are and why we started to do this in the first place, that's such a beautiful thing about martial arts. And it's hard to explain it if you've never been out there in the fire or competed yourself in whatever the discipline, whether it's grappling, a sanctioned fight, MMA, Muay Thai, kickboxing, boxing, whatever. In those few minutes of competition, you will learn more about yourself than you could have ever possibly imagined. And if you've never done it before and you're searching for something or trying to find maybe a little bit about yourself, check out an MMA gym, check out a martial arts gym of some sort and figure out a little bit of something. And maybe you learn that, hey, this isn't for you, but at least you learned. Moving along from that, we're going to transition into 3 rounds to close out the show. Got my man Danny Bailey behind the boards as always. First round, my brother, what do we have?
All right, Jordan, a video of a verbal altercation between former champions Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Jamal Hill surfaced. Any thoughts?
It's a really interesting situation because you hear what Jamal had said to Joanna, but you also don't really see what prompted that, or you don't see what Joanna said in advance. Now, Jamal Hill has came out and he's pretty much, he aired himself out in the process, said, hey, like, I'll be honest, I was trying to smash. I was shooting my shot. My girl knew that it was happening. So whatever the agreement of the dynamics of their relationship is what it is. Not here to judge that part. But he also showed some of the DMs of them going back and forth. And it was a little bit kind of flirtatious initially, but then Joanna, as it was said by Jamal, kind of flipped a switch at one point and was just like, oh, you talk smack. We from Poland, we don't do this. Said, I'll knock you out. I'll knock your girl out too. Whatever, something along those lines, where he said Joanna basically kind of flew off the handle. And then Jamal, what was caught on video was just Jamal's response of, hey, like, if you put hands on her, I'll put hands on you. Not necessarily the greatest look, but I can also at least understand where Jamal's saying, like, hey, we're not going to be going there. We're not doing that. And then he also said that, you're saying that I'm talking smack. I'm, other colorful language. But so you're saying that I said something. Well, what did I say? Like, what happened? When did this dynamic change? Like, you're the one who just told me to come and meet you at this hookah bar. What changed from then to now? So it's kind of a messy situation all the way around. Not exactly the most tactful or the great look for either one of the former champions.
The first lady of MMA, Gina Carano, is back in the gym. Any chance we finally get to see the Ronda Rousey super fight?
I tell you what, if Gina really is truly back in the gym and has the fire and is working out and trying to get to a competition level form, I love that fight so much more than Ronda Rousey going and boxing Katie Taylor. We talked about that a little bit on the program last week. This was a fight that was supposed to happen, more than 10 plus years ago. And then the whole situation of the fallout with Gina and Dana, and the text that Dana accidentally sent Gina that was supposed to go to somebody else where he was talking smack about Gina, that pretty much folded all that from ever coming to fruition back then. Now, though, with both of them at the stage of their career, being retired for so long, being past the point of their prime, why not? That would be a much bigger sell, I feel like, to the masses, having Ronda and Gina fight, given that Gina's had massive popularity in her acting roles, whether it be Mandalorian to whatever else. She's also had her certain sets of criticisms in the process, but then again, so has Ronda. These are two ladies who kind of have a heel aspect to them. Gina has a little bit more of the babyface angle in some ways, but there's also, given some of the controversies that she's been embroiled, and they both had a bit of a villain arc at times. Either way, I'm all for that fight. That's a much better matchup for Ronda than Katie Taylor in pure boxing.
President Donald Trump has said that the White House card will host 8 championship fights. Is this realistic or is it fake news?
Fake news. Is it fake news? If we're looking at it from just a logistics standpoint, there's only 11 weight classes. So him saying that there's potentially going to be 8 or 9 title fights, that's purely unrealistic. That would mean that you have to hold off title fights from about every weight class over the course of the previous quarter. That's not going to happen. That will not be something that is able to be done. And also at that, I know that Dana has said, yeah, we can't depend on John to be on a White House card. You got to have John Jones on the White House card. You have to. I think that it would be a disservice to everybody else out there if you don't have John in the mix. However many title fights that you go and you run out there, whatever. I also believe kind of the sentiment that Brandon Royval shared, and this is kind of some Hunger Games type of thing where you're going to be fighting in front of a bunch of billionaires and a bunch of people who aren't really true fight fans who are just there because of status and who they may be. Shapiro, the CEO of TKO Entertainment, also made the statement today that tickets will not be available to the public for this show. It's basically going to be a button-down event, and there's going to be invite only as far as the crowd that's there. Yeah, if I'm a lot of the fighters, I take probably a little bit outside of maybe the spectacle or the prestige of it being a White House card. I understand Brandon's point of view of him saying, I would rather fight in front of fans who want to see me fight, true fans of mine. I would rather be in that environment than someplace where I'm just kind of the person who the rich people are, feeding their bloodlust off of, if you will. But that right there wraps it up for us this week. This is a tremendous opportunity for us to always deliver you original combat sports programming each and every week, and we appreciate you for rocking with us. Please hit that like, share, and subscribe button on Mile High Sports, wherever it is that you have the chance. Check out the magazines, the merch drops. Come down here to number 38. They have so many things that are going on with the winter sports time and all that stuff going on in the mix. I want to give a big thank you to my man, Danny Bailey, behind the boards, holding it down for me each and every week. This weekend, don't forget, we got multiple events going down. Specifically, want to highlight 5280 Muay Thai going down at the Stampede Saturday afternoon. We'll get you out of there in time to be able to go watch Brandon Road Dogg Royval pick up that win in the UFC main event, the very last card of the ESPN era. I'm Jordan Kurtz. Give me a follow along online at Comments from the Peanut Gallery. This is the MMA Plug presented to you by Mile High Sports.